This High Septon Maynard, he recorded everything. He even recorded his own bowel movements. What does annulment mean?
It's when a man sets aside his lawful wife.
Maynard says here that he issued an annulment for Prince Rhaegar and remarried him to someone else at the same time in a secret ceremony in Dawn.
The Mad King is dead. Rhaegar lies beneath the ground. Why weren't you there to protect your prince?
Our prince wanted us here.
Promise me.
Hey YouTubers, it's Charlie. So a lot of you requested a bonus video for Gilly's big info bomb revealing Rhaegar Targaryen got married to Lyanna Stark secretly after putting aside his lawful wife, Elia Martell. So this is going to be a clarification on the timeline and sort of an examination of the reasoning behind the events of Robert's Rebellion and why common sense didn't prevail and they didn't just tell everyone what they were doing. I'm going to set aside my wife and get married to this 15-year-old girl from the north that's betrothed to Robert Baratheon. So like a lot of big wars that get started over contentious things, everybody's asking the question, how come this spiraled out of control? Why did everybody do the thing they did? Why didn't Lyanna Stark send a raven to Winterfell explaining that she was running away with Rhaegar? Because if you don't remember why Robert's Rebellion started, it's not because of her abduction. That's not the thing that started it. It was actually her abduction that prompted Rickard Stark and Brandon to go to King's Landing to petition the Mad King to do something about the situation. He promptly burned them, and Robert used that as an excuse to start the rebellion with Jon Arryn. Jon Arryn was sort of the first big person to call his bannermen in the Vale. Goldtown here was where the first official battle took place, and then I'll sort of chart the timeline as they go around, but that's not quite as important as what Rhaegar and Lyanna are doing, because there was all this other stuff going on in the background. We can tip the hat to Littlefinger for revealing to Sansa during Season 5 that Rhaegar was truly in love with Lyanna Stark, regardless of the fact that he was married to Elia Martell at the time. And it wasn't so much as book readers early believed that Rhaegar was just this crazy person totally obsessed and took her, believing that a child with her would be the fulfillment of the prophecy. Based on the information the show has given us, it's implied that he was obsessed with the prophecy and also in love with her, and it was a two birds, one stone situation that spiraled out of control because of what the Mad King did. So if you want to blame somebody for Robert's Rebellion, blame the Mad King killing Rickard, Stark, and Brandon. Because had he not killed Brandon and Rickard, you probably just would have wound up with a small group of Kingsguard in conjunction with some of Ned Stark's men riding around the kingdom looking for the two of them. The most fascinating thing, the biggest WTF that people point to during all this, is the idea that Robert's Rebellion lasted for a little over a year, and it seems like at no point during that period did either Lyanna or Rhaegar try to let anybody know what was going on. Just the two of them, with presumably a maester to watch over Lyanna while she was pregnant, and Arthur Dayne's Kingsguard at the tower, just sort of waiting it out, waiting for Jon Snow to be born, and then who knows what they would have done after that. Maybe they would have emerged and tried to explain to everyone. But you rewind to the tourney at Harrenhal, so this is sort of the timeline of events, and you get an idea for the reasoning of why Rhaegar did what he did and why Lyanna probably did what she did as well, because she's just as culpable as he is in all this. So around the year 280, Prince Rhaegar and Lord Walder Went conspire to throw the tourney at Harrenhal. It's intended to be the most lavish, big tournament event that the kingdom has ever seen. Bigger even than the tournament that Tywin Lannister threw a couple years earlier to celebrate the birth of Daenerys' brother Viserys. So you might remember that from the Season 5 opener where Cersei is going to see Maggie the Frog. That was happening while Tywin's Lannister celebrating Viserys was happening. So the tourney at Harrenhal was a couple years after that. And the idea is that Rhaegar was going to use this tournament and make it such a big thing in order to convince all of the lords of the kingdom to come, because just because a tournament happens doesn't mean that everybody in the kingdom turns up. But you make the prizes for the tournament big enough, people will turn up for a chance to win some money. Rhaegar, as crown prince, was basically the richest person in the kingdom after Tywin Lannister, who had just thrown his tournament. So the idea is the Mad King is genuinely mad by this point. Rhaegar wants to depose him, while at the same time being obsessed with the prophecy of the prince who was promised. So the only way to get rid of the Mad King is open rebellion, where a bunch of people die, or you call a great council. The lords of the realm collectively agree to depose the Mad King and place someone more sane, Rhaegar, on the throne in his place. So Rhaegar is obsessed with the War for the Dawn. He's only worried about the Night King and the White Walkers coming back. So he knows that the realm needs to unite, meaning they need to have a sane king on the throne. So this is where the tourney at Harrenhal comes in. But Lord Varys, Master of Whispers to the Mad King, gets wind of this and suggests to the Mad King that Rhaegar is using the tournament to plot against him, and he should go to the tournament himself. So the Mad King turns up. Rhaegar is unable to throw his great council and conspire with the other lords. But while he's there, he wins the tournament, and in front of all the lords of the kingdom, rides past his wife, crowns Lyanna Stark with the blue roses, and causes this huge scandal. But then shortly thereafter, he supposedly abducted her, like they ran off together. So you have to imagine that they were either falling in love and that it just culminated at the tourney at Harrenhal, or just something really intense happened. He charmed her, and she was like, okay, I'll run away with you, handsome prince man, let's go. So giving them the benefit of the doubt, you can assume that Rhaegar probably met her sometime in the past and fancied her a little bit. But while this was happening, the tourney of Harrenhal, she's 14 years old. She's about the age Daenerys is when she was married to Khal Drogo. Daenerys was 13. She was a little bit younger. And Rhaegar is 22. You can be creeped out by that if you want, but Khal Drogo was much older than Daenerys when they got married. So if you don't think that Khal Drogo and Daenerys is creepy, then you're not allowed to think that Rhaegar and Lyanna is creepy. This all happens during the course of year 281, so then shortly thereafter, they run away together to Dorne. Per Septon Maynard's crap diaries that Gilly found, he annuls his marriage to Elia Martell and marries Lyanna Stark. So a lot of people have pointed out that Rhaegar really sucks because he set aside very nice person, Elia Martell, who was always nice to him, even though their marriage was a political one. They weren't in love with each other. He had 2 children with her. But because the prophecy of the prince who was promised talks about the 3 heads of the dragon, Elia Martell was not able to have children after their second child. So Rhaegar needed that 3rd child, and he was also in love with Lyanna Stark. So remember, 2 birds, 1 stone. The Night King's coming. We need the 3 heads of the dragon. So King Henry VIII style, he petitions the church to give him that annulment. Presumably the maesters or whoever it was in Dorne said, okay, Crown Prince, we'll give you your annulment, even though technically the Faith of the Seven doesn't allow for annulments. And around the time they're getting married, Rickard and Brandon go to King's Landing to petition the Mad King to go find Rhaegar, bring him back, because they're under the impression that Lyanna Stark was kidnapped by Rhaegar and not in love with them. They didn't know anything about their relationship. So here's where we start to get to crazy town. Like, how come someone just didn't tell them that she was in love with them? So year 282, they go to King's Landing, get burned. Shortly thereafter, Robert's Rebellion begins. Then within a year of that, Lyanna Stark dies giving birth to Jon Snow right after the sack of King's Landing. So it sounds like what probably ended up happening, and probably the reason why initially after running away and getting married, they didn't tell everyone, is because Robert's Rebellion had already started and people were dying left and right, and they were worried about what would happen. They would either kill the baby, 2, they might have tried to kill Rhaegar, and he believed himself the only hope for the kingdom because the Mad King needed to be put aside. And he also probably didn't want to leave his child, the prince who was promised, without a father to guide him in the War for the Dawn. So it's sort of like that Romeo and Juliet thing where they run off, the kingdom goes to war over it, and they're like, oh shit, we didn't really mean to start this, so maybe we lay low for a while this baby's being born, and then try to find a way out of this. But before that could happen, Rhaegar is called back to the Trident, he's killed by Robert, and then the rest is history. They sack King's Landing right after the Battle of the Trident, then Ned Stark comes down here, you get this scene, Where's My Sister? And before Septon Maynard here reveals that Rhaegar and Lyanna got married before Jon Snow was born, meaning he's legitimate, people had already gotten the idea that the fact that the Kingsguard were there to protect her and the baby wasn't so much because the baby was important, but because the Kingsguard are meant to protect the crown prince, and Jon Snow, after Rhaegar, was next in line for the throne. And it is important to remember that as Crown Prince, Jon Snow has a better claim to the throne than Daenerys, even though nothing will probably come of it on the TV show. They're really fuzzy about the rules of succession on the TV show, and most people don't listen to them. Even George R.R. Martin left room for the rules to be broken. Like Cersei broke the rules when she took the throne. She had no claim to it, and Jon Snow is not petty, so he's not going to go to Daenerys and say, I have a right to the throne that's greater than yours, so it belongs to me, not to you. He's not going to do anything like that. But hopefully that clears some of the reasoning up why Rhaegar and Lyanna did what they did. You have to remember that she was 15 years old when they got married, 16 when Jon Snow was born. So Sansa, right now on the TV show, is older than she was. She's like Sansa's age when she was married to Ramsay Bolton. So rewind a couple seasons and think about how characters that age on the show act. And it's not too outlandish to believe that she would be impulsive. They say that Arya favors her in her disposition and kind of the way she looks. She looks a little bit like Lyanna. But think about how Arya reacted when Ned Stark told her what her destiny was going to be. You'll marry a great lord, live in a big castle, and she's like, that's not me. So that's kind of what Lyanna Stark was like when this was all going on. I'm going to do what I want to do. And Rhaegar, obsessed with the prophecy, in need of a new wife and a new heir, just took it all as a sign from the universe. This is the fulfillment of the prophecy. The path is clear. Go get married to her, set aside your wife who can't have any more children, and then everything goes to shit after that. The wheel continues to turn. So the whole idea that Daenerys is trying to break the wheel is the idea of people not doing crazy stuff anymore and things going off the rails, which obviously isn't going to happen this season. Season 8 is going to happen. We have the War for the Dawn. So let me know in the comments, how many more Rhaegar flashbacks do you think that we'll see on the TV show? We haven't seen any yet. We've only seen Lyanna Stark. The show hasn't confirmed their relationship, so they have to do that first. Then maybe, I'm really hoping that we get to see Battle of the Trident and see him die and whisper Lyanna's name. Maybe that's going to be a Season 8 thing. But what'll happen is I'll post a new bonus video on Sunday before episode 6 airs. Please don't post spoilers in the comments. I know there was a leak. This isn't a video about episode 6, so we'll talk about episode 6 when I post that video on Sunday like I normally would. It's just going to be like last time, similar situation. There is a new round of the HBO Now giveaway video. While you wait for everything, you can click here for my episode 6 trailer video, and you can click here for my episode 5 video. Thank you so much for watching. Everybody stay awesome. I'll see you guys tonight.